Good morning, Heartfelt fans. Jamie Lynn from Heartfelt Horsemanship, and I'm doing a bit of a lesson with Gareth and Cherokee. And we are talking about Western pleasure and as well as Western disciplines, and there's more Western disciplines than just reining. One of my favorite disciplines is in fact Western pleasure. Gets an awful lot of flack for, things like peanut pushing and cripple lope. And I absolutely don't train my horses for that. And the beauty of it is all of my Western pleasure horses, even when I was a very green trainer, would win for having a nice natural headset. So the first thing I have Gareth doing is getting into a nice active walk. I want to remember that a pleasure horse has a nice smooth gait. The idea is, does this horse look like it would be a pleasure to ride just about anywhere? You don't have to work too hard for it, and oftentimes ranch work requires you to work low and slow as you're cruising along and not zap your horse's energy or your energy as a rider. Remember, active riding takes a lot of calories. So we would like everything to look like a nice, easy partnership. So Gareth is working with Cherokee. Cherokee actually has a fairly nice Western pleasure build, and conformation is in fact, I think it's 20% of the score if I'm not mistaken. So we're working with a horse who has a nice conformation. Not to say that horses that might lack in conformation don't win, and the difference would be is how the horse is ridden. So Gareth is doing a nice little Western jog now. And so what we're looking for in Western pleasure is to have nothing bouncing and moving around, and everything looks like a pretty fluid partnership there. If your horse just can't do this, Western pleasure may not be your forte. We want to remember that training for Western pleasure properly takes a ton of training and preparation and conditioning to be able to do those slower gaits, the walk, the trot, and particularly the slow lope. Takes a ton of training the top line, getting that belly up off the ground, and a lot of people use spurs and bits and get their horses really around through tools, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. If you watch YouTube for snaffle bit futurity and whatnot, you see a lot of two-handed riding in either a bozal or a snaffle bit. So you don't actually have to have, all the gears and tools that some people tell you that you need to. And the way that you achieve that is through working a lot on speed control. So Gareth, can you do some walk jog transitions for us? And I'm just going to talk about, just do 4 or 5 for me. I don't really even care about strides. We'll count strides just now. Okay, so we need to have our horse in good condition, because the average Western pleasure class, in South Africa, it might be 5 or 6 horses. In the States, sometimes they have 40 horses lined up, and you could be walking, trotting, loping, and teardropping back the other direction for a very long time. So again, you need your horse to be fit and be able to stay calm, focused, and carry a soft feel throughout several dozen transitions until the judge gets to have a good look at everybody and see everybody. So first and foremost, I'd like to know that your horses can follow the rail and make transitions that are almost invisible. Watch Gareth as he comes down to a walk. You didn't see him pull on the reins. He used his seat. If your horse isn't working off your seat, you're going to end up sort of creating chaos that the judge does notice, and it deducts points. It doesn't look good. That's not what the judge is looking for. So Gareth, as you make some transitions there, I would like you to play around with, I'd like you to use your reins once or twice, just so that way we can show sort of how sloppy it looks to not have seat control. So I'm going to ask you to ride badly for a moment. It's very hard with Cherokee. Cherokee's a pretty correct young guy that's had just the best upbringing. Okay, so did you see how Gareth used his reins? He interrupted the nose or the forward motion, and there was quite a bit of bounciness there and almost overstopped. So really what you're looking for is to have transition so smooth that your cues are invisible, because you can actually see the difference from what Gareth was riding before. Go back and rewind the video and start over. You can actually see those transitions interrupt the forward motion. And when you're thinking about making transitions, and you'll often have more complicated transitions that don't go from walk to jog to lope. It'll often be a walk or even sometimes a halt into a lope that needs to depart so smoothly that nothing bounces. And again, if we're using sharp tools that might inflict pain, we actually sort of interrupt the fluidity of it. Again, we're looking for a really pretty picture. So your next step is going to be to have good speed control. Now, just because we're doing slower gaits, Gareth, I'm going to have you go over to the trotting poles. And can you just make a circle over those trotting poles, because I want to see what it looks like when this horse really picks up his feet. Oftentimes horses are sort of overtrained for Western pleasure, and they end up dragging their toes through the sand, and first off, that is not good for your horse. Second, we want to see your horse's natural movement. Again, that's where confirmation counts. So I recommend spending a lot of time working on poles. Come on around again, Gareth. I want to see horses being able to get their toes up and out of the sand. Remembering that most Western disciplines are shown in a nice big sand arena. We don't want those toes dragging through the sand. It looks bad, it creates dust, and again, when you're creating dust, the judge is going to notice dust. They may not know exactly what you're doing, but out of the corner of their eye, especially a really good astute judge, is going to notice some commotion. So I recommend lots and lots of trotting poles. Now, a great way to be preparing for that is to do the other Western disciplines. I recommend everybody start off showing in hands so your horse gets used to the arena. I recommend everybody does horsemanship. All right, Gareth, can you just have a break there? I'm going to have you work on some lateral stuff just now. So start out with some horsemanship and halter classes, especially if you have a really nice horse. And then do horsemanship, trail, get your horse's toes off the ground. And this gets your horse really prepared. Again, if you're conditioning for Western pleasure, you should be able to ride all of those other classes well, because those are in fact how you're preparing to be able to show your horse off at Western pleasure. So the next thing we're going to talk a little bit about, and I'm going to do a couple more videos on this topic because it's actually one of my favorite disciplines, is to be able to get your horse to slow down without interrupting forward motion. You know, now that we've talked about making invisible transitions that look pretty and don't create a lot of dust, we talked about getting our horse's toes up out of the sand so they can move properly. Sometimes we need to use lateral motion, a bit of haunches in, to slow our horse down and keep that lope nice and slow, as well as set ourselves up for proper lead departs. I guarantee you that the judge can see you not strike off on the correct lead. You might have to break gait or do a flying lead change, and this is not raining. You do not need to do flying lead changes in Western pleasure. Judge should not be seeing that. So being able to strike off on the correct lead is going to be really important, and having your lateral work going for you is going to be one of the keys. Gareth, can you just show us a little bit of your preparation for doing some lateral work? Give me a basic rollover, and then we're going to refine it. So when you learn our 4 core movements, you learn how to do a disengagement, you learn how to move the shoulders, you learn how to move the barrel, and all of these things have very little effect from the nose. Again, this happens with your legs, with your seat, with your pelvis, and definitely not by pulling back on your reins. So if we have that lateral motion in there, we have a way of reshaping our horse so their body has to slow down without having a big jerky forward motion. Okay, so that is an exaggeration of being able to move the haunches. Alright, Gareth, I'm going to have you go to the end of the arena, and I would like you to jog towards me, and I'd like you to do some haunches in, both to the left and to the right. So if you see Gareth and Cherokee come straight at me, You're going to see him do little mini disengagements, or talk to the hindquarters, move his hindquarters one way, move his hindquarters the other way. So if we can get that done, that was really nice, you guys. If we can get that done well, chances are we can probably aim well for our lead departs. Again, it doesn't take spurs to get that going. Gareth moves the hindquarter with his legs, he sets his focus, and the canter actually comes out of Gareth's seat, so we don't have to be doing too much with our legs. And again, spurs aren't required. When we can get that rollover action that Gareth just practiced, ride away from me and do a couple more haunches. If we can really practice getting our horse supple, look at that, very nice. We have a better way of getting our horse to be able to slow down on the rail. So those are the things I'd like you guys to think about as you're preparing for Western Pleasure, and I want to talk about a couple more things in my next video. I hope you guys enjoy. If you'd like to know more about our program, hi Cherokee. If you'd like to know more about our program, please drop us an email at heartfeltkzn@gmail.com. And you can ask about our correspondence course then. Please like and share our YouTube. It allows us to keep bringing you free videos.